Welcome back to Culture is an Inside Job. Hey, friends. Good to see you. Scott.
Hey there.
Karen, Wendy,
Yes.
it's a great day.
Scott, Wendy. Yes.
We've
And
already
today is all about Karen.
Yes. Yay.
Yeah.
We've already been, being goofy with each
Mhm.
other before we hit the record button. So that's always fun. But yeah, we thought we've spent, in the very beginning, when we started recording these episodes for this podcast, of course, we all shared a little bit about ourselves. But as we've been going along, we really set a foundation for, kind of like why we do this podcast. Culture is an inside job. So we've been talking a lot about the importance of self-awareness, and we've shared some tools. And then we dove in. Scott's got this amazing book, Culture is an Inside Job. And so we spent some time with Scott asking him about his career, his book. And so then we thought we will turn the tides on Karen.
I don't have a book.
Not yet.
That is a good point. I had to actually go to therapy before this episode because I thought it was all about me always. What happened? I'm kidding.
We will turn it around so it is still about you, Scott. Don't you worry.
Yes. Well, both of you guys, both of you love coaching so much, and you're involved in it. And I'm not sure, and maybe you do know, but I'm not sure you really understand the impact that you have on people. And not only like the impact that you have on the individual, but the impact that you have on the lives that an individual interacts with every single day. So thanks for touching the lives of people in profound ways. It matters and it makes a difference.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah. I think you're right. It's hard to sit in this and see the impact that, the effect that can be so, the ripple effect, right?
Yeah, the impact, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And Karen and I talk about that a lot, just how, we are holding the space for so many people, on a regular basis, and we love it. It's what we do. And it's like, okay, remembering to make sure that we hold that space for ourselves too. And that's a whole nother episode, right?
Right here, my post-it, take time to do it for me.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about that a week or two ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I
well,
haven't
let's
gotten
jump.
any better, by the way. So.
Well, one step at a time. That's what I said. One step
Yes.
at a time. So let's jump in to get to know a little bit more about you, Karen.
Sure
Maybe
thing.
just what do you want our listeners to know about you? Just, personally, professionally, and then of course, I'm sure everybody's really interested in, why you chose coaching and kind of how you became a leadership coach. So whatever's on your heart to share around that.
So as Scott asked, I'll go back to my childhood. I guess it really kind of does start back there. Back in North Kakalaki, Carolina, otherwise.
Oh, okay. I was like, Kakalaki.
We lived on a golf course, and in between everybody's houses, there were these little vacant lots, and we would go and take our whatever we could find to blaze some trails. We had dirt bikes, we had go-karts, whatever it might have been, to go and create and pioneer, I guess, right? So that is a resonating theme for me even now today, how blazing trails and pioneering. And I didn't really understand the value of that until more recently, because we just took it for granted. When you're a kid and you're outside, and back in the day, of course, because kids don't do that anymore, but climbing trees, and just your neighborhood was it didn't matter. Everybody was it didn't matter about your ages. You just all hung together, and you took care of each other, and you learned from each other, and you came home when you were hungry or needed to use the bathroom, right? But
So
go ahead.
let me ask you a question. So
Yeah.
I love that. So were you a dirt bike girl, go-kart girl,
Yeah.
dirt bike?
All of it. I had both.
Do you had both? Seriously? Okay.
Mhm.
So how many, like in your group, I'll call it like Karen's posse, right?
A
So
posse.
100%. So you're just, I love this. Like I would never have imagined this. So thanks for bringing life to this.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
how many characters were in this posse?
Oh, great question. My neighborhood, there were in my age group, there were probably about 6 or 7 of us. Most of us, like 4 or 5 of us girls, and then a couple boys, and then my younger brother and his posse, although they were 5 years younger, but they would
How,
hang
who's
around.
the who's the craziest one?
Uh, Craziest one. Well, I think one of my guy friends who did, uh, without mentioning names, really did. So the biggest story here is that we're not allowed to ride motorcycles on the street, right? And we did all the time. And my mother would come in her station wagon and try to find me because she would know that she would find me on the street. And my friend and I was the actually only one that had a motorcycle at the time. Everybody else had either bicycles or go-karts. So my motorcycle was the hot thing, right? And you're not really allowed to ride them, of course, on the golf course either. And we did that as well. So they would chase us with their little
Now,
Cushmans and we'd get in trouble all the time. Yes. So I probably was a bit of a rebel rouser in that. And that my friend and I would, constantly be testing that with, but we were all still very respectful of each other and each other's homes and our just the even the golf course in general. It was our backyard. It was our playground. It was where we learned things. It was where we, yeah, just, and we were all really good kids. So I feel good about that.
Yeah, I miss those. Thanks for talking about that. It's because
Yeah.
like it's just those ornery, right? Like not bad, not terrible, not nasty, not mean, not manipulative, just ornery. Really curious summer days in a creek, in
Oh,
the
yeah.
dirt, in the woods, and all of that. Really just kind of cool stuff. So
Yeah. We had this really cool area that had there was a dam right behind my house, and a tree had fallen across. Of course, you had to go over to get to the island, and it was one of those out of a, kind of a scene out of the movie. And that was where we, you're not allowed to go down there, kids, but we would always find a way to be down there. um so I think why that's such a huge aspect of where I am right now was the fearlessness of it, the interest in creating and finding new places. Um, and Wendy knows this. Last year, my word of the year was pivot, and I think it was such a really important word for me at that point in time, and trying to really think about how when we're in the middle of change, and everybody right now feels like change, and it's a buzzword, right? Change management, trying to undergo change, organizations all over the place, you know, reductions in force. Um, just shifting is not, it's become very costly, it's become very traumatic, and change is hard. People don't want to have to go through change. There's a huge level of resistance right now around the world. And so I was thinking about how, if we didn't, like, what would be a better way to go through this? And that would be to reflect, to get the information that we need so that we can pivot. And that means we're doing it a little faster, we're doing it a little more regularly, more often. So this year, my word was pioneer. And that was really because this goes back to who I serve. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead probably with some of your questions. But the idea here is we might see something, and we as leaders, regardless of whether we lead other people, we are still a leader. So being able to take that and push through fearlessly on the road that you see ahead for yourself, for those around you, that's that piece of pioneering. And I guess it comes back to just my natural instinct, I guess, of interest in that.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, I think growing up on a dirt bike is a cool way to grow up.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have guessed that, and I wouldn't have gone there. I just wouldn't have. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We've
and
all,
that's what I love hearing about, like, our upbringing and how we were as a kid and all of that too, because we do just well, we learn so much, but we see where the parallels are,
Mhm.
or and right? We also remind ourselves about who we really are and who we have inside of us. And like for you, when you said blazing some trails, pioneer, like I heard adventure in that, right? I heard a lot of curiosity, and then that whole just being willing, even when you were a kid talking about some of those things, that is pivoting, right? Like just doing
Mhm.
it, and then a fearlessness. And so sometimes we forget that we have those things within us. And so we have to remind ourselves who we truly are and that we still have that inner child in us, and it's, okay to let her out.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Channel that, right?
yeah, definitely channel it. So, okay, so anything else about when you were, just you personally that's important to share, or growing up, or anything you want the listeners to know about you?
Family was very important to me. And interestingly, I think it was a very innate thing, and that because I didn't really have a ton of family around me,
Mhm.
but we would travel to family. So being in North Carolina, my great grandparents lived in Lynchburg, Virginia. So we would go to see them as often as possible. It was like a 3 hour trip. Um, my grandmother was about a half hour away. Some of my cousins may have been like 3 hours away, but I just felt there was a disconnect there because we didn't have them close by. And there was something important in me about that. And so when I came to New Jersey for the first time, I saw exactly the family dynamic that I knew that I like innately needed. I was drawn to. Let's just say small town, big family, uh, lots of Irish Catholic, lots of Italian Catholic, lots of strong Jewish communities. Uh, just really family first, right? And so that stuck out to me, and that was a very pivotal moment in my life after graduating college. I'm like, I'm going to Jersey. And everybody's like, what? Jersey wants to move to North Carolina. Why would you be? And I'm like, well, I'm the rebel rouser, I guess. I'm the blazing of the trails here. So let's pioneer something new. But here I am.
Different.
You felt more of a family connection in New Jersey versus North Carolina.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, still do to this day, and it isn't because of my family, my mom, dad, and brother. It's really because of the the really small town feel with the big family roots. As a matter of fact, yesterday we just had a really great day in our community. It's the second annual Porch Fest. Exactly what it sounds like. Every like maybe 12 different local bands all come together across the inner part of our town, which is what we call Freehold Borough, and it's everybody kind of walks, so it's not like it's not like you're far away. So, uh, 10 or so different bands all set up along a few different streets. And you just kind of bring your family and your, wag the wagon with your kids and cocktails, whatever it might have been. Gorgeous day and just family, huge family presence. Getting to kiss everybody, hug people that you haven't seen, listen to some great music. And I don't know if you know this, but this really is one of the hometowns of one of the greatest musicians of our time, and that's Bruce Springsteen. Not that we're here to talk about Bruce, but there's a lot of other music that he inspired in this area. So they really it was kind of cool to watch all these guys like just be how it's a hub of really great musicians in this area. So anyway, it's the family thing. Yeah. But I
Well, I
wish
just
that
keep
my
learning.
parents would have come here because it would be great for them to be a part of this. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Family. That was important.
Love that. So what led you to being a coach? How did you get there?
It's a great question. So with a business degree, my two favorite words were efficiency and effectiveness. And taught as well as probably learned as well as a part of me. I started working right away for one of the largest prominent American lingerie and beauty retailers. Started out as a manager before I'd even graduated college. So there was a lot of toxicity in that kind of culture that we don't need to get into, but everybody's aware of. So as I worked through some of that and realized how deeply, traumatizing it can be for us as women in this community, like wanting to make a better, like whether it's, getting on the corporate ladder and moving up or having more influence as a manager. Either way, there was just so much going on that I was so blind to. And as I started to see just that culture, it started to become very, there was nowhere I could pioneer anywhere in here, right? There was no voice here that was going to resonate, not going to compete with this huge corporate aspect. So shortly after being in retail for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I transitioned luckily to an organization where we took care of employee benefits. And I worked for a small boutique brokerage where I was really his right arm. He was moving out of Manhattan and wanted to be closer to his home, so which was really a town over from me. I absolutely 17 years with Bob. He was, a boss, a mentor, a father figure, a coach, just one of the greatest experiences I could have ever asked for. And I think I've probably mentioned this before on one of the prior podcasts, but that to me was the moment, very, very pivotal moment in my life that I realized that if this is what anyone would want, this is what everyone wants, this kind of culture, this kind of feeling like you belong, right? That's all we want. We want to belong. And how he created that for me, be able to go home to my 3 girls when I needed to, when I wanted to, without a question, if I wanted to work part-time, if I wanted to work full-time, if I wanted to hire someone else, no matter what. There was just this tremendous amount of trust and respect there. So when we were downwinding the business, I did go and start working for another brokerage, because I was like, all right, I'll see if maybe it's the insurance industry that I want to keep playing in. After 3 months, I'm like, hail to the no.
Hail to the no.
Hail to the no. No. And so that night, I remember it was my like 3rd month anniversary, and I was like, this isn't working out. And so I went home, and one of my dear friends and I sat down with a glass of wine. She goes, you'd make a really great life coach. I'm like, what's that? The next day I looked up and did some research and have not looked back. I signed up for IPEC the next day, and here I am. So I think seeing the importance of being able to help individuals and their teams that they sit in traverse some of that challenge and ick, right? That was to me like, I think I can help because I know what really healthy culture looks like. I know what toxic culture looks like, and I know what really healthy culture looks like.
Yeah, and I can just well, obviously I can see and feel and hear your emotion from all of that, and a lot of that is because you did get to experience what a really good leader is, right? And a healthy culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it is I mean, I have chills thinking about it now just because I've got to experience the same thing, and so I can feel that from you. It's like you had someone who supported you and, helped you to grow and helped you to be the leader that you wanted to be, right?
Yeah.
And, and so then the opportunity to be able to support other leaders, and tell me if I'm wrong here, right? But from both from the perspective of you being able to support other leaders to show up as their most authentic self
Mm-hmm.
and make a bigger difference in the world, quite frankly. And to help them know that if they don't have that, like, they have a choice, right? They can still they can get the support, excuse me, and they get to make a choice in kind of the environment they put themselves in.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of that. A lot of them feeling like they don't have a choice.
Yes.
What's Bob's last name?
Goldsmith.
Awesome. What was the name of his firm?
We were called Benefit Planning Group.
Gotcha. You know what? You said you brought that up. I've never heard that story, and I never
Yeah.
knew that's the space you came from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You and I are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. So we're like, what do you call it? Spirit animals, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
What would your spirit animal be?
Mine? Well, I would say society might think I was a hyena, but maybe I'd like to think I'm more of like a koala bear.
Oh, I love that. I have my little koala bear right there. So see, we are cut from the same cloth.
Yep.
Um, yeah, Bob was just I don't know. It was divine.
Mhm.
I see you get, I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of emotion, you've got a lot of compassion, and you had just what I sense is like all these wonderful, terrific memories that you have about this person and the way that he
Mm-hmm.
allowed you to raise your daughters and yourself and all of those things. And so what I think is what you're trying to do is maybe help other people try to like find that in their world. And
Yeah.
if you think about what's the difference between a boss and a coach?
Oh.
Great question. So a a boss typically would be more command and control, perhaps. A boss could still be just as much of a coach, but I think that our society, especially here in our Western culture, probably just America. let's rule out Canada because they've got some. They're very kind. We got some problems here, but this culture has the go go go, push push push, and results are very results are the primary aspect of an corporate America basically. And I came into that organization, and I'll tell you, I was ready to scale that organization. I was ready to, what do I need to do? How do let's do some sales and marketing. I mean, I had just come from a sales environment, right? And he kept having to quell me and that. And he's like, Karen, we don't need to do that. I'm not interested in selling. I'm not interested in growing. I have everything right here that I need with these couple of large firms. And I want to stay in this little boutique space. I want to be able to provide them with this kind of service. And I got used to that without having to go and pound any pavement or make any calls. And it was because of the level of respect that he had with his HRBPs and the insurance carriers that we worked with. And that is the model that I started to adopt. And it wasn't about growing. It wasn't about marketing. It was really about that human experience of just taking care of what needed to be taken care of right here and there. And he did it with exemplary expertise. And I mean, just my love of spreadsheets. I just love spreadsheets, and he loved that I love spreadsheets. So anything he needed me to do, he handed me. I'm not even sure what your question was. What was your question?
Yeah.
I'm like,
No, I think
I'm like on
you're
a tangent. Yeah. So what's the difference you said about a coach and a boss? Trust. Trust that you have the answers. That's a coach. Coach's role is to trust that you have the answers. And so Bob trusted that if I didn't have the answers, he trusted that I'd figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have to go and pioneer a lot of my own figuring it out. And he gave me, I didn't even have a leash. So he just trusted that I'd figure it out.
Yeah.
because I think one of the things too, and I'm sorry, Wendy, because I
No, I was
keep
gonna. No, I could tell you had another question, so that's why.
no, because I
Okay.
no, I think what's really interesting too is just the gratitude that you have by finding this incredible leader. But secondarily, I think would be the fact that, in my experience, a coach has a lot of experience. Like a coach normally, and I'm thinking more of like sports today,
Mm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
like a your baseball coach, your volleyball coach, your football coach, your tennis coach, golf coach, all that. They've played the sport, right? So they played the game. They understand the ups and downs. They understand, as you like you said, pivot, right? So the physical movement. They also understand, what's going on up here in regards to coaching. And they're built to train with you in that. But deep down, I think a coach's greatest job is to inspire and encourage and to bring out what is most often already there, hidden deep inside the droves. Um, because when I think about you working with him and emotionally where you are right now, if you wouldn't have gone to that first place, right, you wouldn't have this example of what toxicity looks like and womanize, like all of those, just that skunky, horrible
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have that reference point. And then if he still would have been in the business and wouldn't have sold, like my gut tells me, you probably still be there, right? You probably
We had talked
maybe.
about, well, here's the thing is that we had talked about at one point, maybe me taking over that business, but really it was a relationship business. And so I was not the one that had that relationship. While I had, great relationships with everyone, it was really him that had that relationship. So it was a retiring thing. He didn't sell the business, he downwind the business.
Mm.
And so because it was a perfect timing for him, it was a perfect timing for me to not have that as a crutch. I wasn't really interested in the insurance industry. I mean, felt like I was very knowledgeable about it. Totally learned how to uh, navigate the whole inner workings of a organization, a small company. I was his COO, CFO, CMO,
Name it. The
yeah.
AC.
So I would definitely, yeah, it was just one of those moments where I realized that it was time for me to figure out what would make my heart sing.
Mm-hmm.
And a perfect opportunity it was.
Yeah. Again, like Scott said, I can just feel your gratitude and so forth. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your heart about that experience. And I love how all that kind of led you to exactly where you're meant to be, right? Like that path
Yeah.
that you're meant to take. And I'm curious about that too. Tell me more, tell us more, right? About when you think about coaching and leadership and culture, what are you most passionate about
Yeah.
when you think of those things?
Um, I see so many leaders sitting in a role where they're waiting for an invitation, or they're struggling to try to figure out how to ask permission because they see something or they feel something. There's an inner knowing. And it's like, okay, go get your tools to go blaze the trail. That's all I can see. I'm just like, you don't need permission. Don't wait for, an invitation. What do you need to pioneer in order to create the change, to pivot, to tweak? What needs to be tweaked? What's the information? What's the data that you have? And I think that's one of those places that is just my natural sweet spot, is to really empower those leaders to find their voice, to not need to wait for leaders to come and bring them the opportunity, for them to go and continue to seek that opportunity, find their truth, find what makes their heart sing. Um, Lean on their strength for sure, recognize the things that they're not as great about, and whether they find someone else to delegate that to, great, or lean into it to learn. But really think about, what is it that makes your heart sing? What is it that makes you most that you can't wait to do again?
Mm-hmm.
And find a way to bring that into every day.
Yeah.
Because there's something that's energizing about that, right?
Oh, so energized. And to your point, so needed. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are so many people in general that just need someone to hold that space for them to really kind of identify with that. And speaking of what makes your heart sing, what does make your heart sing as a coach?
Mm. Yeah, I think, like you just said before, holding that space. I mean, we've been taught as coaches that it's not about us, right? You're not supposed to say we're proud of you and things like that. But there are so many moments where, watching that transformation, you can't help but just feel like so joyous for them finally having those ahas, and having that realization of truth within them, that such change that they've had to, that holding that space for them, for that transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, finding that capital T truth, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Within them and who they are. And so um just keep digging in a little bit deeper for you as a coach. What do you feel like your sweet spot is? Like, as we know, especially, right, there are so many people who are coaches, or, say I'm a coach or what have you, and they focus on different things and so forth. But
Yeah.
when you think of you as a coach, what's your sweet spot?
So this goes back to my struggle after certifying. And, we're all supposed to find a niche. And I was struggling. And at the same time, I was in a peer group we were in a mastermind group with other coaching peers. And there was this very strong, uh, keen awareness of when people were in a values challenge. And you're probably like, well, what's a values challenge? So any kind of any challenge, any kind of struggle, any kind of conflict, my first question would have been to ask, well, what is the value that's being challenged? And the more that I did that, the more I could see transformation start to occur. And when my mentor coach at the time, and I'm like, oh, I'll never figure out my niche. She's like, Karen, it doesn't always have to be the who. It could be about a what. So if you thought, what is it? Like you just asked me, what's your sweet spot? So she's like, what is it that you love more than anything? Now she knew the answer to this already, but I was blind, right? So I was like, oh, values. And she's like, yeah, now what would you like to do with that? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, think about if you're that thought leader around values, what would that look like? What do you need to kind of explore and do some research around or whatever? So I got to work pretty much right away on building a case study, created an assessment, tweaked it, pivoted quite a few times, um, enlisted several good coaches to come and kind of play in that space with me to see if, how does this work? How powerful is this? How transformational is this? And I finally got to a point where I really liked what I was doing. So then I created a certification for other coaches. Had a really strong group of affiliate coaches that supported me through that as well. And so my sweet spot really is values. But then all of a sudden one day, I realized that after about 4 years of doing all this research and creating, that I was broke. So I had to go figure out how to make some money now. And I needed to just go and coach. So that put me into the space of sitting on several different coaching platforms.
Yeah.
And
Talk about coaching experience, right?
Yes. It was very, very a tremendous amount of gratitude for the coaching hours that I was able to get through those few years. And but yet here I am in this space of really trying to figure out, what does this next pivot look like for me around values? So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm in the middle of a tweak.
Yep. And we pivot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pivots
Mm-hmm.
and tweaks.
Yeah, pivot and pioneer. Pause. That's it. It's pause first, right? Like pause, pivot, and pioneer.
Pause, pivot, and pioneer.
You gotta pause to get the data. What do you need to know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you pivot? Why would you pivot? What do you need to pivot toward?
Yep.
And then just go do it. Pioneer it.
Hey, Scott, I'm curious from your perspective when Karen talks about, values and how, she saw the importance of working with leaders on that. How valuable is that, right? Do you, from your perspective, as far as if, having a coach, let's say, work with the leaders that you used to work with at McGowan and Brabender, what's the value that comes from that when somebody can dive into their values? I think that's my question. What's the value of a leader being able to dive into their values?
Yeah, well, I think from the first part, I think there's a lot of people that might be listening thinking that I have to be broken to get a coach. And that's a lie. You don't have to be broken.
Right.
Although there is beauty in recognizing that all of us are broken. And that's when everything unleashes. But you don't need to be fit. Matter of fact, if your company is telling you need to be fixed, great coaches will say, I'm not a janitor and I'm not a fixer.
Right. Time out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, so if no one's willing to coach you, there's one common denominator. It'd be you. So you're in a problem. So that, let me just set that aside. So if you're listening, hey, but, and then you asked the question, and it's actually, I think, really interesting too, because it's probably where a coach would start, right? Is in just deep understanding of you. And I know when I first got a coach, my coach was Pete Kunk, and we were talking about values and
Shout out Pete Kunk.
yeah, great guy. And then unfortunately, a lot of things that I valued were monetarily. So I had a real hard shell around me. I had ego. I had just, I had a lot of things. I was a big Humpty Dumpty in a wall. But like the two of you, he gave me a lot of time and grace and space to discover that without pushing me off the wall and watching me break. But if I had to go back to my homework and I had to look at what I initially said that I valued versus my 5 core values today, that was a really cool
Mhm.
journey.
Yeah.
And I'll probably end with this. I didn't know I could be that honest about my values. I didn't know I could be that brave about my values because I wanted them to fit in like an Intel or a Google or a Starbucks theme. Does that make any sense? It's like,
Mhm.
no, like it's like I don't even care what they are as long as they're yours. Like you own those and you carry a torch and you move those forward. So great place to start. And they change and shift too. I mean, I'm 59. I think I did mine when I was, 43. So I think it's a wonderful place to start.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, Aside from just the importance of the individual and them peeling back on getting their values, organizations have their own little core values that they put on their walls everywhere, right?
That's right.
And I see a lot of big words that I don't see a lot of the people in the organization walking the talk. And so that's another area that I love to be able to support. To how do you help
We
your
had a
organization walk the talk?
Wendy's was at McGowan Brabender when we wrote our vision, and it was like a paragraph long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had this employee. She walked up to the wall and she said, I go, what's wrong? And I think um, even back then, I would ask questions, not in a way like, hey, if you answer this incorrectly, I'm not going to harm you. This isn't going to hurt. Like, no, tell me. I'm really curious. And she said, I can't memorize all that. But what I can do is I can see 3 words and I can memorize that. And she goes, empowering healthier living. And I was like, oh man.
As
Mm-hmm.
you say, boom.
There, mic
Yeah. I was
drop.
like, that was that's pretty interesting. So I don't know, Wendy, if you remember, we spent so much time writing that paragraph,
Yeah.
and then we ripped it off the wall, and we just said, "All right, now we're going to go from a paragraph to 3 words." That was
Mhm.
it. It was
Absolutely.
awesome.
Love it. Love it.
Sometimes we probably make things a little more complicated than we need to, right?
Yep.
But
It's
Yep.
true.
just to make sure we hit it all. No, I love the work that you do in general, Karen, in your coaching and especially you bringing the values in because again, I just don't think it's what is as important as it is. I just don't think many of us are walking around going, "Huh, what are my values and how am I living into my values or how am I not and how is that affecting me and how is that affecting other people?"
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, you really bring. And to your point about teams or groups or, what have you, like when we can look at those together, oh my gosh, the impact that we can make because we all bring our individual values, but then how are those leaning into our values,
Mhm.
as an organization and even as a team. So I love that
I
you,
think one thing that I watch you do, Karen, you do really well is you ask questions in a way that doesn't put people on the defensive. Like I've had board of advisors that would ask me questions, and I would always say, "Quit asking me questions you know the answer to."
those are called leading questions.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's almost like so sometimes like they would make you feel dumb or they
Mhm.
would make you feel like
Mhm.
stupid or
My
you
kids
would
say
just
that about
say,
some of the questions sometimes.
Yeah.
Probably because
but
they are leading.
but I will have to say the questions that you ask, I mean, like a lot of times you'll ask some questions and they're not easy questions,
Mhm.
but you don't say it in a way where you're like accusatory. You don't even say it in a way like ask me a question about it because I'm going to give it to you. It's a really cool like jolting of
Mhm.
the noggin. And you just and you do it in a really good way.
Yes. Well, and I think that's one of the things that I really love so much about coaching leaders is helping them become coach-like leaders, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Teaching them to use that empowering question tool that really is your number one tool in any and all circumstances. Um, and so building that muscle, just being able to figure out what's that most empowering question that you can get to the thing behind the thing that again, let's go back to the very first thing I said here was efficiency and effectiveness, right? So let's be efficient with the question and so totally effective that if it's not going to provoke you in some way to help you get to that critical thinking, then it's, you know, my job is pretty pointless.
I think this is a great place to wrap up for now. Not that we won't be coming back to more questions for you, Miss Karen, but I think you know how at the end of all of our episodes we're like, let's go inside. When you think of even what you were just talking about there, if you were to invite our listeners to go inside,
Mhm.
what might the challenge be?
Yeah. Where are some of your values that you have been aligned with all these years? Perhaps have some fear in them.
Ooh,
How's that for a question?
that is a good question. All right, well, let's write that down so we remember to come back to
Mhm.
that next time because it's good.
Yes.
Great. Anything else y'all have as we wrap up?
Thanks for being vulnerable. And I was at an event the other day, and they said the word listen and the word silent have the same letters. And so I just really appreciated listening to you kind of tell your story, especially your journey as you were a little girl and you were growing up and like all of that. And thanks for being vulnerable and thanks for being you.
Thank you for creating the space for that. Next time I'll bring my motorcycle helmet so you can
There,
have the real
I
picture.
want to see it. I want to see it.
Sounds
Taylor,
fun.
yeah.
Retreat. Sounds like a retreat with motorcycle.
Yes. Oh, let's do it.
Oh gosh. All right. That's a whole nother story. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.